One thing that came up for me as you were talking was the word was oceanic.
Yes.
The grief is oceanic.
Yes.
And in some very, very deep fundamental sense, it's kind of like a singular ocean that while I cannot feel the specificity of your grief, there is something deeply akin.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if I have delved deeply into the ocean of grief, then this gives me the capacity to be in relationship with you through grief.
Yeah. A deep participatory knowing.
A deep participatory knowing. Yes, exactly. I don't know the specifics of your grief, but I know grief.
Yes.
And I can go there with you, in my own grief, but there's something about us being both able to touch that and feel it together that has that, like, there's a kinship, there's a sharedness at the level of what I would say, but that's the level of the soul
Yeah.
or something like that. That was one piece. The other piece was strength. That when you encounter someone who has your mentor, your Jungian archetypes,
Yeah.
wise words, when you enter into a relationship with somebody who has experienced grief, one of the things that you can have some confidence in is the strength of the relationship has real possibility,
Mm.
because life can throw stuff at them and they will not shirk because they have lived through stuff and
Yes.
therefore can live through stuff.
It
you know
deepens character. It deepens
it
their
deepens their
trustworthiness.
character. Yeah, it
Deepens their
deepens their
character and their
trustworthiness,
trustworthiness.
right? And
Yeah.
therefore you can invest more deeply and fully into the relationship because and therefore the relationship has more possible strength. And then as you invest into the relationship, it begins to build more actual strength. And then as the relationship itself experiences grief, right? A whole new level of possible grief is possible
Yeah.
that continues to strengthen and enrich, and so the relationship becomes more meaningful, but also becomes stronger and more capable of living in life. And that it's almost like a triadic cycle.
Yeah.
The individuals are experiencing life and feeling grief, among other things, hopefully not exclusively. And if they step into it, if they learn how to, like, okay, boy, it's growth time. I'm going to grow into that and building more maturity and more strength in self, more character. And then the relationship itself has more capacity, right? There's a third player in this story, and there's something about that triangle that is like the secret the secret answer to the question of the moment in which we live. This religion that's not a religion,
Yeah.
and the swiftly approaching catastrophe that I think we're all noticing.
Yeah.
A big part of the answer to that question has to do with strength, and relationality and the ability
Yes.
to be present to what's happening and step into it with increasing growth and maturity. And the kind of the nerdy language there would be something like that's anti-fragility.
Yeah. Okay. That was amazing. I've got a lot I want to say now in response.
Ready to listen.
Okay. So the first was in what you just said, which is you're making an argument for um, the way grief affords a deep participatory knowing that itself affords what we were talking about last time, the enacted imaginal, the ability to take another person's perspective, internalize it, and become trustworthy. And people who haven't appropriately leaned into their grief, I would propose to you go the opposite way. They are people
Ooh.
that we should suspect are not trustworthy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they can't get to the depths. So this is a connection to the sacred, because we talked last time about, the sacred being this imaginal, dialogical, right, ability to enact the imaginal, augment reality, reciprocal opening, internalize. And what you're saying, the argument you just made, at least that's what I was hearing, is people are deeply trustworthy, they're deeply internalizable. They can really imagine, in the imaginal sense, our perspective, and we can theirs, if we have equally participated in grief. And people who don't have that, everybody experiences loss, but people, what I'm going to use the word grief to mean people who have experienced the loss and, as you said, have leaned into it, as opposed to have adopted strategies of avoidance, right? And those people, I would say, by symmetry of argument, are people we should not extend our trust to as readily.
Yeah, they'll tend to be reckless with your heart, for example.
Yes, yes. So the next thing that came out was I wanted to zero in. So there was this, and it was great, but there was the kairos of what you said, which was the modal shift. And two things came to mind right away. Right, one was Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And there's this line, and it was one of the first lines in literature that started to awake me to the distinction between the propositional mode and the other modes, perspectival, participatory. So it goes like this. Ivan Ilyich always knew he was going to die, the way he knew that 2 + 2 = 4. But now, and it's in capital letters, he knew he was going to die. And there's no way of capturing the difference propositionally, but it's that modal shift, right? It's that modal shift. And then part of Stoicism is to get you to realize that every moment, that you're not immortal at the end of your life, you're immortal throughout your life, right? And so that resonated, the modal shift. And then the second, I'm trying to brilliant literature that puts its finger on the modal shift. So the story of the Buddha. This is a story I often tell when I'm trying to give support to people suffering grief. So a woman comes up to the Buddha and she's lost her son, and she's demanding that he resurrect her son. Now, the Buddha, of course, famously refused to perform miracles, which I think is an important thing, but we'll talk about that another time. So there's
also, by the way, refuse to perform miracles. Very Buddhist.
It's a very good thing. But she keeps badgering him, and she keeps badgering him, and she keeps badgering him. And then he says, all right, I'll do it on one condition. One condition. She says, anything. He says, go into the town and get a mustard seed from somebody. She said, well, that's easy. He said, aha, that's not the full condition. The condition is you have to get a mustard seed from a house that has not experienced grief. So she goes into the town, she knocks on the door. Do you have any mustard seed? Yes. Have you experienced has anyone in this house experienced grief? Yes. My brother lost his brother. Oh. And then she goes from door to door to door to door. And then the parable goes, and then she went, oh. And then she walks back to the Buddha and she says, thank you. And that's how the story ends. That's the modal shift, right? That's the modal shift.
Yeah. Damn, dude, those are good.
Yeah.
Obviously they're good. And thank you for recalling them, but also thank you for living them. So that in the telling of the story, I felt both, like they hit. And again, that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
God, they're brilliant because they are ostensibly propositional.
Yes.
You're uttering words, and they're both koans in that very specific sense of like, they're using words, but they have an artfulness to them where there's a way for them to actually present and then hit. And when they hit, you feel it. Like I felt a kineticness in both cases when the modal shift landed, and the dropping, and therefore an awakening and entering into, oh, okay. Yep. Yeah, that's that. And that's that. Like, that's it.